All right, so today we'll talk about why most creators pin the wrong post on Instagram and what they need to be doing instead. And there's also the same reason why pin posts are costing you clients. And obviously, here's what you need to be pinning instead. And it's also a mistake that 99% of creators make when it comes to pin posts on both Instagram as well as LinkedIn. Now, a lot of the examples I'm going to be walking you through here are going to be more so for Instagram, but it applies for LinkedIn as well. And yeah, if you are a service based entrepreneur, if you're a coach, consultant, an agency runner, agency owner, or a freelancer, a personal brand, someone who's really monetizing off of selling something online, or again, if you're the creator who sells something online, then this is going to be a perfect video for you because I just recently revamped the pinned posts on my Instagram page and LinkedIn page. And something that comes up time and again with a lot of my leads and clients is when I look at how they treat their Instagram page or just their social media handles. And so every single time I was walking my clients through these things, I realized instead of just explaining it or bringing it up over and over again, I thought I might as well just walk them through what I just did recently with the three posts that I came up with. So what I'm going to do today is not just tell you what's the mistake and what you need to be doing instead, but also walk you through three different posts that are actual posts that have gone live on my Instagram handle and LinkedIn handle recently. And so I'll walk you through how I got here and what you need to be doing instead. So first and foremost, the mistake that most people make is they end up pinning their most viral or the highest performing posts on Instagram uh, with the attempt to make their channel or their handle look more credible. The reason why they pin it is because they want to show to people who land on their page that they are a credible source and they can get views. And in everyone's minds, views kind of equate to credibility and also to a fair degree of the amount of money you're making maybe. But that's a big mistake because no one gives a shit whether a video of yours or a post of yours has gone viral and got a million views. What people are looking for is constantly why they need to follow someone, whether there's any relatability with the person, and how that person or that brand can help them. And so those are the kind of questions they're asking themselves every single time that they land on your Instagram page or LinkedIn page, and through some of the content that you might have published in the past. And so the way to focus on the way to position yourself needs to be how do you quickly communicate to them who you are and whether it makes sense for someone to follow you along on their content creation journey. Apart from that, another thing that has changed very recently is how sorry, I think I just got a call. So another thing that's changed recently is that just because of how people are searching for things and how the nurture process works, earlier you would drive traffic to your website and the website would kind of do the heavy lifting for you. And so a lot of the nurture and the convincing happens on a landing page or a website. But of late, what's been happening is a lot of that nurture process has been pulled in to the social media handles or your YouTube channel or any of your online, wherever you have online presence. And so the way you need to start treating your social media handles is start treating it like it is the landing page. And so the quicker you can nurture, the quicker you can tell them what or who you cater to or what you're trying to do with your brand, the easier it is for them to hit the follow button and follow you along on the journey, and you're actually building a relationship with your audience. Because at the end of the day, building a personal brand is basically just building relationships at scale. That's basically what a personal brand is. And so yeah, so instead of you just pinning your highest performing posts, what you need to instead focus on is you need to have one post that talks about your story, your unique story, and how you got here. The second one needs to talk about your method. The more proprietary your method is, the more unique your method is, higher the chance of someone following you along as well as spending money with you, because I think we're sick and tired of seeing the same thing being regurgitated in numerous forms. And so, the more unique and more novel and the more proven your method can be and your framework can be, the better it would convert into both attention as well as revenue. And then finally, the third post you need to be pinning is your values. Who do you stand, what do you stand for, rather, and who you are as a personality. And so, if you think about it, these three things together are basically the three posts I came up with as well, and I'll walk you through how I approached it. And so, if someone knows what your story is, you're kind of giving them a quick overview of how you got here, and so they're kind of caught up to where you're at right now. So that's the first post. The second one is talking about what is the approach that you take. So let's say you're a coach catering to maybe the fitness space, then what is the kind of approach that you're helping people scale their coaching services or their fitness coaching services, and how you're approaching it that's different from everyone else in the market is what your method and framework needs to talk about. And the third one is, why should someone follow you, and what do you really stand for. And one important thing that about this trifecta is that yes, you want to try and build a bond with a lot of people that find you through your content, or in whichever way the algorithm serves your profile to others. But more importantly, you need to start warding off and repelling the wrong people. And I think that's a mistake. It's another mistake, rather, that a lot of personal brands and entrepreneurs online do, which is they try to cater to everyone, meaning they cater to no one. And so in this case, the way you need to approach this is, if you have a very strong value or a polarizing value that you really abide by and you stick to, then you need to be doubling or tripling down on that. And that's what will build you a cult like audience, as opposed to kind of playing it vanilla and safe. And so your trifecta, that I like to call it, basically would attract the right people, but more importantly, repel the wrong people as well. And so in my case, based on my content strategy, where I am catering to what I showed you right at the beginning, it's catering to any service-based entrepreneur and helping them get to their first 10 to 20K month is what I'm optimizing my profile for. And so that's my ICP. And so the story that I have, the unique method and framework that I'm following, as well as the values that I've kind of curated here, are all with the intent that it's nurturing them and leading them to what I offer. Because it's not just about sales, it's also about just impact. So if they follow along and they're able to learn through your content, then nothing like it, because I'm really here optimizing for as much impact as I possibly can. And so yeah, the way I got to this was I studied numerous profiles and I tested a bunch of things out. And with my previous pinned posts, so right now, this was, or rather up until recently, this was the main pinned post on my Instagram handle, where I was walking them through how I got here. So if you look at the entire flow, and now we'll actually go through what are the nuances and the bits you need to focus on when it comes to your pinned posts, maybe with the story post that I mentioned. And so in this one, it was to primarily target people who were who are 9 to 5ers, or people who have a full-time job and want to become entrepreneurs. And so my ICP was slightly different, because I was running an experiment for about 4 to 6 months to kind of understand what that type of ICPs would be kind of looking for, because that ties into my navigator model, a completely new model that I came up with recently. So that experiment meant that I had to position my handle slightly differently. So I was catering to a slightly different segment. And so this story was doing the heavy lifting for me, where it ended up getting quite a few thousand views, but more importantly, it nurtured the right people, and I got a couple of sales and got a lot of people to engage with me in ways I thought would never happen. So if I were to quickly go through what the story was like, in this one I was basically talking about my entire story, telling them, allow me to take you down memory lane. So I went through the start. I spoke about how I have a background in computer science engineering. I was an engineer. The initial plan was for me to get a high paying job, get an MBA, and then get an even higher paying job, and then eventually become an entrepreneur. Got into Deloitte, worked there for the longest time in consulting, burnt out, and as I went through it, I realized that the rat race is real and it's not going to get me what I want anytime soon. And so I waited for my US visa. There was a setback, the visa came through but then got denied eventually. And then I was like, okay, enough's enough. I might as well take a break from work and focus on my first business. Worked on my first business. It actually picked up, came back to work, continued working on the business alongside my full-time day job, my consulting job, and then went all in on it. COVID hit us. It was a big challenge, and that's when that was another setback. And that's when I worked on my second venture, Unimedia, which is still my bread and butter today. It's an agency that does media and consulting for small and medium businesses as well as personal brands and individuals. And then finally, because of my podcast, the media company really blew up. Eventually moved to a new country, got laid off in the new country when I went back to a full-time job where I was working on the business alongside my full-time job. And then, yeah, what are the lessons? I did another experiment with a coffee business. That's my second venture that I'm working on. It's called Money Coffee. And then finally, this is the mission. So, mission is to basically help people get started based on everything I learned through that process. And so you'll see, I went through about like 15 to 16 slides here, and I concentrated or kind of curated the entire story to cater to someone's emotion of how you have a full-time job and you can still get started on your venture or your entrepreneurial quest, but also talking about the emotions of what might happen if you tried and didn't make it, if you don't try that you won't make it, what are the takeaways, few examples. So there's a lot that I've jam packed into this one post, and that's the way I approach the whole thing too. And you'll see it's almost etched in my memory, although I think it's been like 5 or 6 months since I published this, but this is genuinely and authentically what I went through. So when I look at this entire, the flow of the post as well, it's very clear in my mind, and I'm kind of going through that ebb and flow of storytelling. And so, yes, I've packaged a lot of my thinking, a lot of my history, a lot of my credibility work into this one post. But the big takeaway I want you to focus on here is basically storytelling. Like, storytelling is one of the oldest art forms in the world. Like, back in prehistoric times as well, you'd see people etching their stories and images onto caves, and so that was a form of storytelling back then too. And so even before the alphabet or whatever was invented or discovered, I don't know how you put it, but anyway, it's way before that too. People used to tell stories, and that's how things were carried on from one generation to another. And it's the same thing here. So the more you can kind of go through good storytelling, it's going to help you with keeping someone's attention. It's going to help you in work with your presentations. It's going to help you with closing deals. It's going to help you in more ways than one. And so even this flow, if you look at it, for me, it's very clear because I've actually approached it more from kind of a technical lens because I've done or created so many decks and presentations at my consulting job at Deloitte that the entire even the takeaway or the heading or title of each of the slides talks about what happened there, and then I have sort of a takeaway for each of the images. So it's all etched in my memory, and it's kind of going through that ebb and flow. I would say you need to think through all your bullet points and what you're trying to convey. But the first thing you focus on is what's your final takeaway from this. If someone read through this entire post, spent time on this post, what will they walk away from this having understood, or what is their big takeaway? And to couple that with, you need to think about what's the emotion you're trying to evoke in them. That's the first thing that you need to focus on. And then you kind of reverse engineer the entire post in a way that you kind of story tell and go take them through this entire thing. This is a 15 to 16 slide long post or a carousel, but my engagement on this was through the roof. But more importantly, I didn't care whether this post did well organically. My main intent with the post was for it to be a catch-all on my Instagram handle and my LinkedIn page, where anyone found me, they would take a look at this, they'll get an understanding of what my history's been like or my background's been like and how I got here. So that's basically what this story does. And this was my previous post, but now, very recently, because I've kind of slightly tweaked my ICP and I'm focusing on attracting or working with service based entrepreneurs, the entire story, uh, again, it's all rooted in reality. This is fully authentic. And so, what I did in the last few months, along with that experiment I mentioned earlier, was I actually built a six-figure business using Unimedia, my media agency, my media consulting business. But then I stopped scaling it on purpose. Here's why. And so this part you'll see kind of evokes emotion much more in someone who is a service-based entrepreneur. It's meant to hit that bone or hit that relatability piece, because people think that once they scale their business and they'll hit a certain goal, everything's going to change. I made like multi six figures from this business and then still ended up not scaling it for a reason, and I pivoted. I made a pivot. And so this hook in itself is pretty captivating. And I would even argue that, and something I tell my team and my clients too, you need to spend about 60 to 70% or probably even more on your hook. If you can work on how you can perfect this first slide, then chances are they'll actually be hooked and they'll actually spend time with your entire flow. And so, if I were to go through this, the flow as it stands right now was, again, I spoke about how I got started in consulting and I got exposed to the world of consulting, but I wasn't impressed by how conventional and boring and drab things were in consulting. And so, my journey into content was a little bit of a strange one, where my podcast blew up, got sponsored by Sennheiser, went on to be ranked in the top 1.5% globally. And from there, the media house, Unimedia, was born. And from there, I started working with numerous clients, did well. But then, few years in, I realized that I need to completely rethink things, because the done for you model, where we take care of everything from planning, shooting, editing, content creation, all of it, pays well, but the nurture process is crazy hard, which means it takes a lot of time for you to convert a client. And that's because we're getting paid on an average $7,000 to $8,000 per client per month, which is pretty steep. And not just that, let's say I ended up getting all, the number of clients I need to hit my personal monthly goal. Even then, the amount of work that's needed behind the scenes to keep that going, because we own all of the content. So from planning to shooting, editing, publishing, marketing, ads, all of that is a massive, massive challenge, a massive feat. And I realized that it might work for people who want to run an agency. It doesn't work well for me, because I wanted to cap the number of people I had in my agency and more so focus on helping individuals, hit their financial goals. And so it was, like I mentioned earlier, for someone who's an agency owner, someone who's gone down the conventional scaling a company route, this would really strike a chord. But more so, people who are facing challenges with hitting that 300K mark, they might also be convinced about what I'm offering here. And so that's the way I kind of positioned my story. And so I spoke about how I wanted to help as many ambitious entrepreneurs start and scale. And so I decided I was going to start catering to two other segments. And so that's where I'm helping people get started and hit their first 10K month or 100K year through my idea to revenue consulting program. And then there's revenue to scale, where if you're already at a 10K month or a 5K or 10K month or 100K year, then we help you hit your 20K to 25K month or 300K year. And that model is what I call the navigator model. And I mentioned that you can actually find out more about this in the next post. And so I said, I'm not here to just simply spray and pray and just publish content, but I'm here to actually help people out. So if you'd like to see the entire framework along with the case studies and examples, then comment. And that's basically a CTA. Now, I know for the fact that this is not going to do as well as my previous pin post for sure, because that would cater to a broader audience, and the relatability piece of, the struggle of either quitting a 9 to 5 or running a business alongside a 9 to 5. That was the emotion I was going after. That would obviously be more compelling than something like this. But I do know for a fact that someone who is a service-based entrepreneur, once they do read this, they will be able to relate to this far more than any 9 to 5 would. And so spent like days on this particular post, and that's how it finally looks this way. I put together the right images, the right words, and kept it in a way that it's super readable and you can kind of skim through and get an idea of what I'm talking about. But I should say that even getting here, it took me a lot of time, like few days. And you'll see if I were to scroll down, these are all just the random drafts or slides I have. Let me zoom in. So I have about 7 or 8 hook options. Actually, more than that. I had about 9 or 10 hook options. So I put together 9 or 10 and I ran it by, I think, my audience or my team members, or my wife as well, few people, to get their thoughts on what would be the best hook. And these are all smaller differences, right? So it's like, then I stopped scaling it on purpose was capital. Then I stopped, no, wait. Then I deliberately stopped scaling it. I deliberately stopped scaling it. The entire thing was bold. And then I had one with a different image. I had one with different opacity. I tried it all, right? So I put all of those together. And like I said, I spent about 70-80% of my time on the hook first. And I should even say that before I got into putting it up on Canva, the first thing, and this is something I tell my team and clients over and over again, you need to focus on that storytelling piece, which means you need to focus on copy, which is rooted in that emotion, like I mentioned earlier. And so the first thing I did was come up with all of the write up, or at least the bullet points on Notion. I have that's the tool my team and I use. I put it all together. I'll actually show you that as well in a bit. But I come up with the outline there, and then maybe even perfect it with AI, and then put it into whichever format it is. You could use Photoshop or you could use Canva, but I use Canva, and so that's how I put this together. But I want to stress on one thing here. When you're coming up with your story, please, for the love of God, don't start with AI. With any post or any content you're creating, the first genesis of your idea, or what you want this to be about, that whole emotion I mentioned, what is the takeaway, um, the intricacies, right? The psychological piece, you cannot offload to AI. So anytime uh, these content creators talk about how they offloaded all of this and automated it using Claude, I don't believe any of that, because it doesn't strike a chord with your audience the way it should, because your core fundamental strategy or thinking needs to come from us, needs to come from a human. Once you know which direction you're heading, then you can kind of go through iterations with AI. And so once I came up with the outline and I jotted all of that down, and actually I can show you that. So yeah, on Notion. So this is yeah. So actually, we have everything on Notion here. So from our overall timeline to what posts go up, to our different scripts for our short form videos. These are all the scripts for our short form videos. Um, yeah, this is our long form scripts. So all of the YouTube videos, scripts are at least the outline. And then I also have a written post in Carousel. We have our team tasks, we have team notes, we have everything here. And so this is actually part of our tool stack that we provide to our clients, called I2R Tools. So if you're actually interested in checking this out, I'll leave a link to a video breaking down the right tools you need to get started or to scale to your financial goal if you're an entrepreneur. So yeah, stick around till the end, which also would include all of the templates for each of these so that you can set it up on your end. Anyway, so coming back to the pinned post, you'll see this is the post I'm talking about. This is the one that went live 2 days ago, yesterday. And so pinned post one, my story with the new pivot. And so you'll see all of these things I'm mentioning here, all these different bullet points, or rather even the write-up, I jotted down. I actually spent at least like an hour, or yeah, maybe an hour or two, just jotting down all of the thoughts. And then I said, what's the takeaway here? It's the credibility with the work I do, or the relatability piece. And then I shortlisted further points from the top and thought about how I can position this. And then based on all of that, I then thought about what the hook needs to be. And up until now, I've not even used AI. And so once I got to this point is when I realized that, oops, let me put this up. Yeah. So once I knew which direction we were heading is when I started using AI. So I used AI to then rewrite it in a way that fits the tone and that can go up, trying to keep it succinct or, to the point. And then I got like a different slide by slide approach. And at this point, I haven't even moved on to Canva yet. And so, yeah, I went through a few versions here. Finally, once I did have it, I knew I wanted to be within 10 slides, because there's also a limit on Instagram in terms of boosting posts or carousels, where you can't boost or run ads on carousels that are beyond 10 slides. And so I wanted to keep it on under 10 in case I wanted to run ads on this, or I wanted to boost it tomorrow. So yeah, so that's the approach I took. And then once I had clarity on this is when I thought about the layout, and then came up with the images. I actually put the words together first and then came up with the images. And then that's how all of these, the different hooks and versions, finally became this particular post. That's it. And that was the first post, which is your story. Now, I'm not going to walk you through the exact same steps because it is the same steps for all of the different ones. But in this case, my pinned post number 2 is basically my unique method or framework, which I'm calling the navigator model. And so something I kind of teed up in this first post is what's being explained more in detail in this particular post. And so here I talk about how I'm moving away from done for you to also offering done with you and do it yourself methods of working with me. And so it's called the navigator model because these are just different navigation routes for you to reach the same end destination, which is to basically have more revenue, more freedom, more predictable growth. And so there are different ways I can help you out. And so I have 4 different routes that you can work with me. There's a do it yourself, there's a done with you, there's a VIP done with you where there's more one-on-one, and then there's finally the chauffeur done for you where my media agency takes over. And then I explain the benefits of this, why this model works so well. And again, I call it the navigator model, and I have a CTA right at the end. Again, I'm able to walk you through this very, very quickly right now. But when I got started, I just had, like I said, the takeaway and the emotion I wanted to evoke. And then actually, if I scroll down, I'll show you what this looked like initially. So this is when I'd initially gotten started. This is what the slide looked like. And I just had a bunch of images I'd put together. I had the different copies I'd finalized. This is the same approach I mentioned in the story one as well. And then I put it together here, put it together in different slides. And then none of these images, there was no AI generated images, nothing, right? And then once I had all of this and I knew what is the format I was following and what's the approach, then I could go back and change it up according to the right images, the right words, which ones I had to bold in. And so, like I said, come up with the direction, come up with the strategy, come up with how you kind of frame the entire story, think through the storytelling, but keeping in mind what's the emotion you're trying to evoke and what's the takeaway for someone who goes through this. And then finally put it together in a way that a good designer would. And so, so this is basically my second pinned post, which is basically my unique method or framework. And the third one, which is very, very important, is letting people know what my values are and who I am as a person. And so there are a couple of things that are a little polarizing and something that not a lot of people would agree with, which is I focus far more on revenue and profit, and I don't give a shit about views. Even with this video, I know for the fact that this video is not going to go viral, and so I don't care. But I do know for the fact that someone who's a service-based entrepreneur or any entrepreneur who wants to scale using a solid content strategy, this video is going to help them in more ways than one. And also, I've started using media and my entire media bank as leverage in the sense that every time I'm having those conversations with my leads or my clients, and anytime it comes up in my DMs, I can just send them this video now and say, hey, this is how you need to be approaching pinned posts. And so I think that helps nurture people in ways you can't even imagine. The fact that it's showing people how to do things and going through the steps, this is something that even AI can't do. Because AI, at the end of the day, is basically a median of everything outside there in the real world or outside there in the world. Meaning it's studying all of the data that's already present, and it gives you sort of a median approach of everything it knows, and everything it knows about that space and about the questions you're putting forward to them, the prompt you're putting forward to them, and trying to keep it as close as it can to what your profile is like and how you're approaching things, which means it's a median approach from the entire world, and it might be slightly off median based on what you bring to the table. doesn't help because you want to optimize that to the T and to the max. And so that's where you need a human touch. And so if you can think about how you can think through the direction, the strategy, like people call it, again, strategy is a loaded term, but if you think about it, if you know exactly which direction to go, then your prompts to AI will also become more specific. But if you leave the initial thinking piece to AI, then it's going to give you 7 or 6 hypotheses, and then you're trying to kind of build your roadmap and the next steps based on those hypotheses. And so that's why AI is not a good tool for you to use in the genesis or coming up with an idea or putting things together. But once you have a clear idea of what you're trying to put forward, how you're approaching things, then AI is a tool every single person must use because it'll help you go through numerous iterations. Like, for instance, each of these posts, in terms of written copy, I have gone through at least, I kid you not, at least 18 to 20 versions for each of these posts with AI. And it's looking at it, understanding what can be changed up, giving it real feedback, so then I know how it needs to be structured. And that's how I came up with this final values post as well. And so in this case, again, the same approach. The only difference is I wanted people to know how I build businesses and how I create content and just personally live my life. And so I kind of split up each of the page or slide into a business and content value and a personal value. And so focusing on revenue and profit over vanity metrics, always having an entrepreneur first mindset. If you have a good product, then marketing takes care of itself. If you have a good marketing, then sales takes care of itself. All of that. Lifestyle by design, client outcomes and satisfaction, gamifying life. Again, there's a lot, like fuck around and find out, movies and content based. There's a lot. I've mentioned a lot, and it's about 7 to 8 slides long. And so anyone who is even remotely interested in knowing who I am, when they land on my Instagram handle, because of just how well this is designed, it'll be so clear what this post is. And so they might click on it and check it out. But like I said, the whole nurture process and the landing page is now your social media handle. So you need to think about how you position yourself, because it needs to either attract the right people, but more importantly, repel and ward off the wrong people. I don't want people to work with me or even reach out to me who don't have an abundance mindset. And so it's easier for me to qualify, and it also helps build relationships at scale. And like I said, that's basically what a personal brand is. So yeah, and even before I got here, like again, same thing. If I scroll all the way down, you'll see there are a bunch of different hooks. So I have like 6 or 7 or 8 versions for each. I even had another version here. I've spent a lot of time on these posts. And then also how I thought of having like a half and half approach. A few templates I took inspiration from on Canva, all the images I put together. But finally, after spending days and days and hours on this, finally got to a point where this is finally what my pinned posts look like. Now, the good thing is I'm going to repurpose the same thing on LinkedIn as well. So there are going to be 3 pinned posts on LinkedIn, 3 pinned posts on Instagram. I'm also going to have 3 pinned reels, because that's also an option on Instagram. So those are going to do slightly different things, like talk about my stance when it comes to content, talking more so to what my clients might be looking for in terms of how I approach work, and also if they were to work with me, what can they expect. So those are the kind of reels I'm kind of coming up with right now. But yeah, this is basically it. So that's it. So the mistake, like I mentioned earlier, that most people make, or most creators or entrepreneurs make online, is they try to pin their most performing or most viral post. That's horseshit. That's not going to get you anywhere. Like, no one's going to care and spend money with you or even time with you just because one of your reels went viral. And more often than not, you'll see that it's only those pinned reels or pinned posts that have done really well, and everything else is, they've done just nominally well. And in my world or my ecosystem approach, I don't care about views or vanity metrics. So it doesn't matter to me whether something goes viral or not. I'm more focused on impact. And the only way I can build or impact someone is if I can build relationships at scale. And the only way I can do that is if I can evoke emotion. And I can only do that if I choose the right posts and the right content to be positioned on my different social media handles. And so, yeah, so that's basically the approach I've taken. This has gone through, like I said, numerous versions. It's the same thing with the other posts that I showed you as well. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it. Spend more time on the posts that are going to be your landing page posts, because or your pinned posts rather, because that's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. Like I mentioned, it's the same thing I'm doing with YouTube as well, where I have a few videos that are part of my playlist that do the heavy lifting for me, and kind of nurture my ideal customer profile the right way, so that they either spend more time with me on my content, or they end up working with me in that process. And this is another one of those long form deep dives or breakdowns that, if you're still watching, chances are that you're interested in this and this was, valuable to you. If it was, then yeah, then hit me with a like button, and yeah, subscribe if you want to see more. And yeah, like as promised, you can check out the video for I2R tools somewhere up here. I don't know where to point, but it's going to be up here somewhere. And if you're curious to know more about the navigator model, then I'll also leave a link to that video here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.